Gaza photojournalist Fatima Hassouna killed in Israeli airstrike. Fatima Hassouna, a dedicated photojournalist who had spent the past 18 months documenting the war in Gaza, was killed in an Israeli airstrike along with 10 members of her family. Hassouna, who was the subject of a recently completed documentary, had expressed a wish that if her life were to end, it would be a loud death, one that would resonate and not be forgotten. As a young photojournalist living in Gaza, Fatima Hassouna was acutely aware that death was a constant presence. Over the past 18 months, she had documented the relentless airstrikes, the destruction of her own home, the repeated displacement of her community, and the loss of 11 family members. Throughout it all, her only request was that her death not pass unnoticed. "If I die, I want a loud death," Hassouna wrote on social media. "I don't want to be just breaking news, or a number in a group. I want a death that the world will hear, an impact that will remain through time, and a timeless image that cannot be buried by time or place." On Wednesday, just days before her planned wedding, 25-year-old Hassouna was killed in an Israeli airstrike that struck her home in northern Gaza. 10 members of her family, including her pregnant sister, also lost their lives in the attack. According to the Israeli military, the strike targeted a Hamas operative allegedly involved in attacks against Israeli forces and civilians. Just 24 hours before her death, it was announced that a documentary centered on Hassouna's life and work would premiere at a French independent film festival running parallel to the Cannes Film Festival. Directed by Iranian filmmaker Sapita Farsi, Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk explores the reality of life in Gaza through a series of filmed video conversations between Hassouna and Farsi. Farsi described Hassouna as "my eyes in Gaza, fiery and full of life. I filmed her laughs, her tears, her hopes and her depression." The film presents a deeply personal and poignant portrait of a young woman who sought to show the world the truth from within the heart of a war zone. Tributes pour in for Fatima Hassouna following her death in Gaza airstrike. "She was such a light, so talented. When you see the film, you'll understand," said director Sapita Farsi in an interview with Deadline. "I had spoken to her just a few hours earlier to tell her the film was screening in Cannes and to invite her." Farsi, who lives in exile in France, admitted she had long feared for Hassouna's safety but chose to draw strength from her subject's courage. "I told myself I had no right to be afraid for her if she herself was not afraid. I clung to her strength, to her unwavering faith." The filmmaker expressed concern that Hassouna may have been targeted due to her prominent role as a photojournalist and her recent participation in the documentary. The ongoing conflict in Gaza has become the deadliest for journalists in recent history, with over 170 media professionals killed since 2023, and some estimates placing the figure as high as 206. Since the Israeli military launched its bombardment of Gaza in response to the October 7, 2023, attack on southern Israel, more than 51,000 people have been killed, over half of them women and children, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Following the collapse of a ceasefire agreement in March, airstrikes have resumed with increased intensity. At least 30 more people were reported killed in strikes on Friday. News of Hassouna's death was met with grief and outrage among fellow journalists in Gaza. She documented massacres through her lens, amid bombardment and gunfire, capturing the people's pain and screams in her photographs, said Anas al-Sharif, a correspondent for Al Jazeera. Miqdad Jamil, another Gaza-based journalist, urged the international community to reflect on Hassouna's work, see her photos, read her words, witness Gaza's life, the struggle of its children in war, through her images and her lens. The Cannes Film Festival, where Farsi's documentary Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk will be screened in May, released a heartfelt statement following Hassouna's death. "We had watched and selected a film in which this young woman's life force seemed like a miracle. Her smile was as magical as her tenacity, bearing witness, photographing Gaza, distributing food despite the bombs, enduring mourning and hunger. We rejoiced at each of her appearances on screen. We feared for her." Palestinian poet Haidar al-Ghazali, writing on Instagram, shared a poem he had written at Hassouna's request, to be read after her death. Reflecting on her passing and imagining her arrival in a gentler afterlife, the poem reads, "Today's sun won't bring harm. The plants in the pots will arrange themselves for a gentle visitor. It will be bright enough to help mothers dry their laundry quickly. And cool enough for the children to play all day. Today's sun will not be harsh on anyone." Hassouna's legacy, as a fearless documentarian and voice of her people, continues to echo far beyond the rubble of Gaza.